being in the Red Barn with us this evening. Tod, let's see. So I first met Tod, I would think probably it was about in, I would say 2010, 2015. I had just come back from New Mexico, and before Tod had his studio, it was actually my studio, or my rental. And Tod called me up and said, you know, I heard you used to be in this space of mine, and you know, I'd like to show you what I did to the place. And I was like, okay, great. You know, and everybody was telling me that this hotshot architect in town took over your space, and I was like, well, I don't know who this guy is. And so I go over to his space. He shows me through this beautiful, beautiful renovation, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I left so much crap here. Specifically, I had these two murals that I had made at the very end of my time there. I was there for about 2 years. And Tod takes me through, and at the very end he says, now, takes me to these things. All the blood rushes out of my head, and I'm like, oh my God, I know exactly what these things are. And they're just completely black with mold. And he's like, what are these? And I was like, oh, Tod, I'm so sorry, you know. I'll get some friends. We'll take them out of here. He's like, just settle down. You know, what are they? I was like, oh, they're old murals that I did back, you know, after college. It's nothing, I'm sorry. And he's like, no, slow down. He's like, we took them out, and I actually think I got myself a little hernia for that. And I took these heavy, heavy walls out, and Tod starts, mind if I like hose them down a little bit? I was like, you can do whatever you want to them. And he starts hosing them down, and the mold starts coming off, and the colors start coming out. And it was like revisiting this old friend from 20 years ago. And Tod was like, you know, these are fabulous. Can I have these? And I was like, can you have these? And there was another wall, and there was an inset in it. And he said, now what went in there? And I said, Tod, that actually, I think, is the top of your tympanum of the door there that fell out. And Tod was like, we just had that remade. And it was an inset that I had carried for 20 years in Santa Fe. I had carved on it, and we plugged it back into the mural, and Tod's got them both hanging in his place. And ever since then, we've kind of shared this dialogue and friendship around art, around aesthetics. Tod Williams, if you don't know him, is an award-winning architect, probably one of the greatest architects of our generation. And I will stop at the accolades there, but it is indeed my greatest honor to share my creative space and my sacred space with you, and call you my friend, brother. So welcome.
Yeah.
How's that?
Well, first, I would say that was our Sistine Chapel moment. Back in 1983, some of you may remember the Sistine Chapel ceiling was completely black. And they went up and cleaned it off, and they said, the colors are too bright, they're all terrible, but it's what Michelangelo wanted, and so thank goodness that stuff's back, and Michelangelo's back there in our lives. It's just great, and after that, I bought a number of pieces of Tom's.
Absolutely,
and
absolutely.
I loved coming here and loved being here and the smell of the paint, and we've talked a little bit about Tom's creative process, so it's been a huge gift.
Here we go.
Oh my goodness, hello.
Is that a little better over there?
Why be so far away? Jesus. Okay. Can you hear?
You're gonna get to the mic.
Oh, okay. Mic. Okay.
There
Is
you go.
the mic work?
We're very high tech here now.
Is that there happening? Okay. Sorry about it. Well, all the good stuff was just.
It's all done.
Oh, it's all done.
So Tod, if you might, let's start off with maybe discussing how you came into architecture, and you know, what was your desire to make forms, or was it more problem solving? How did you kind of come up and get into this field? Was it answering kind of a vision quest, or was it coming from a different place?
It was probably escaping home. I, at the age of 16, got a job, grew up in Detroit, was born in Detroit and grew up outside of it, went to a wonderful school where by the age of Cranbrook, where I was able to learn to weld at the age of 12. So I was interested in art, but I was interested in absolutely everything. And then growing up in Detroit, I thought, okay, I love design. All of this is exciting. I'll be a car designer. And of course, I didn't have any idea what it was. But by the age of 16, I got a summer job for a wonderful industrial designer who worked outside of Detroit. For the next 3 summers, I worked there and I was a gopher. I did absolutely anything that was needed, but it was a wonderful shop that was making all sorts of things. They had at least 80-person shop that actually built, if you're going to make a presentation of a refrigerator, they build the whole refrigerator and all of the items that would be in it. I mean, exact as it possibly could. And they did, during those years, they did the first BART train system, built a train car, and we built it there, right in outside of Detroit. So it was a great experience, and I just loved it. And then went to Princeton and was sort of taught another way, taught how everything I knew was bullshit. And I think that I believed all that, and I was humble enough to accept that and got through school and just continued working. In a way, first worked for a guy named Richard Meyer, who became world famous architect. I was the 3rd person in the studio. I loved working for him, and one day I had enough small jobs on my own. I said, Richard, I want to bring a job in your office. Can I do that? Bring it in the office? He said, if it's in my office, it's mine. I said, okay, well, then we have to part ways. So I did, and was doing interiors for a number of years. And 10 years after starting to work, Billy Chen, who was my second wife, my first wife was Rachel and Kip's mom. We met and began working together, and that was an incredible and fruitful journey. I'd say I don't think of architecture at this time anymore as if I could be an artist. We've talked about that. I don't believe in architecture as an art. I believe in it as a service. I mean, we are there to make good places for people to live and to find a place on the surface of the earth. It's very, very practical. And for me, the creative process exists with the site, the person, their aspirations, and a common agenda.
Well, we talked a little bit about that in the sense that I always discuss my creative process as being kind of chaos versus control, and how you manage these elements become an expression of where I am on this planet. I'm curious as to whether or not you have any kind of overarching philosophies in your work that you take to the canvas, if you will, and has that always been Tod Williams in as you look back on all your work? Can you see specific lines or specific tropes that go through your work?
I don't actually see Tod Williams in the work at all. I mean, it is what I am and what I do. And I think at about the age of 40, I had the chance to go to Rome. And in fact, that was the 1983. I had a Prix de Rome fellowship and turned 40 that year. And I came back with a much more humble idea of what architecture would be, which is that it was to make good marks on the earth, that it was to try to do work that would last longer than my life and be valued. And it also began to think about the idea of the spiritual, which is not just the Sistine Chapel ceiling, it was the Pantheon, it was the sky of Rome, it was the weight of Rome, the weight of history. So I think all of that philosophy comes really after I turned 40 years old, and actually begins, although clearly the ego is still there in a very big way, increasingly I find that it disappears. So for example, being here on Fisher's Island, I feel incredibly humbled to be able to find this part of the island that was a little less valued and feel like we're doing something that can make this a better place. That's about it. That's really it. So it's my philosophy.
So can you take us through how you build these things a little bit? Like, what does your blank canvas look like? So when we've talked about in the past, I talk about control and chaos. You were saying to me the other day how this idea where you can bring Tod Williams to the project, but yet there's the whole nother aspect of the client and what their needs are. And I was wondering if you might be able to walk us through that process a little bit and maybe some kind of examples of that. I know you had.
Well, I think the blank canvas is particularly difficult. I'll give you a couple of examples. I hate competitions, and we have been in too many of them, and we win them. And as you may know, we're doing President Obama's, quote, library, that we won in a competition now nearly 12 years ago. And I should say that ultimately going from, it's amazingly, 140 to ultimately 7 who competed and then got the commission, the work we did was not the work we're doing. We had ideas that the president respected, but the work was completely informed. So it began to be informed by a dialogue with him, with Michelle, with the challenges at the site. That was my blank canvas, was the beginning of a relationship. And I'd say the weakness of that particular thing as now it's being built is that the relationship is no longer, is sort of disappeared. It's in the work itself. And forever will be, the work is the work. That's all there is to it. The blank canvas for you, you said, is often a grid or even now more recently, a few marks. For me, it is the beginning of the relationship.
Right. Do you feel like when you, I guess it is what it is what you're saying. Like, so we've always explored the idea of whether or not there's a, as Gertrude Stein said about LA, there's no there there. Like, is there a there when we make our creations? So as you let's take the Obama Library, as you work through that, the right and wrong, if you will, is a product of your...
Yeah, of the relationship of the people in the studio, the time, the project, you know. I don't think he wasn't sure what it should be. But interestingly, he didn't know either, and I think we learned together. We said, you know, the Presidential Library is not just a place where you saw the artifacts from and writings of the 8 years of his presidency, but it actually should be a public library branch for the city of Chicago. And he bought into that. And so it is actually a public library branch. And Michelle's Garden should be part of the Chicago Botanical Garden, in a way, producing food, teaching kids about healthy food, and then actually producing it in not only at the site itself, but in communities around and bringing it there. In fact, engaging people. So the work is becomes something else altogether.
Right. Is there a right and a wrong in architecture? When you talk about competitions and you talk about, I mean, I know about this in the art world, or thumbs up, thumbs down. Mm-hmm. How at the arc of your career do you smoke that pipe?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't. I have to judge myself. And
when you edit yourself, are you?
I have to do the work with honesty. That's all there is to it. I don't know. That would be the right way.
Is there honest and dishonest, maybe?
Well, I think.
Do we know that as creators?
Well, I do. I think when I was thinking that I needed to be somebody important, that was dishonest. When I felt that I needed, and I still have that problem of dishonesty, but for sure, when I felt I needed to be something, I mean, let's go really back. We all feel like we're nothing when we're young, I think. I remember first moving to New York and being absolutely thrilled when I saw my name in the phone book. And I thought,
that's like Steve Martin.
5 fucking pages of Williams's. And there I was in the phone book. And I thought, oh my God, I exist. And I just think that's the sort of, that I suppose is a dishonesty, because I thought that was like amazing. And I would say, yeah. And one works with that, and then you begin to sort of, your ego begins to develop. And I thought when I was doing Richard Meyer's work, it was my work. And then I realized it's not my work. You know, I mean, what is my work? My work is what it is. And it's a product of a number of people, and I need to be there, I think, having an important influence in that work, but it's all of our work together.
Yeah.
That's different than art.
Yeah.
It really is different.
But yet you as a firm, you as a conglomerate, and your clients, you guys sculpt out a right and a wrong. So I guess maybe that's the wrong kind of wording to say right or wrong.
Yeah.
And it creates what it creates. We were talking about.
Well, right.
But there are times that you're like, no, we don't want to do it that way. There are times that we're like, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it this way. And that's just, that's.
Yeah, I'm afraid there are those times. Fuck it, yeah, it's true. Probably it's every day, it's those times. You know, we got to do it this way or that. I mean, so there's certainly that. I was thinking, I do think about materials a lot, and I feel that if I think about materials, we knew George Nakashima a little bit, the soul of a tree, person who really, as an artist, feels that the tree has something to tell him, the sculptor. I believe materials don't have a soul. It's what we bring to the materials that is the soul, that dialogue that you have with the materials, that dialogue with the site, that dialogue with the client. I mean, I think that's the real truth. And yes, we're dishonest but we have to sometimes say, you know, I believe this is the right way to do it. And we either have to follow that or we don't. If we don't, maybe we can't work together, or maybe I need to listen more deeply to you. Yeah, I mean, I was very, very upset when President Obama and the foundation said they needed to park 460 cars on the site. I thought, what the hell? What the hell are we doing for the environment? You're parking all these cars when we own a net zero building. That means no, and you know, he never said this, but the foundation told me people won't come unless they can drive a car in Chicago. So we are putting 460 cars below grade, below the park, but that's you know,
Do you feel
nicer? It would have been much nicer if you just said, let's put it into the transportation system.
Do you feel like discovery comes out of those quandaries, and ultimately truth comes out of those quandaries versus?
Yeah, sure it does.
Yeah?
100%. Yeah, truth is life itself. You know.
So you mind if I open this up a little bit to some of these folks? Does anybody have some questions for Tod? And speak up, please.
I have a question. I'm curious as to whether you had mentioned Richard Meyer a moment ago. I think you said you're the third person in the studio or first that. We happened to be in Los Angeles on a repeat visit to that museum. And I wondered if you feel that great architecture, comes in bold gestures once in a while, or whether it's an iterative process. Because when I see that campus of modernist buildings in Los Angeles, to me, I just think it's overwhelming, unbelievably successful.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether that's because, I don't know, that incredible vision did this big thing, or whether maybe it's a slower osmosis. I don't know the answer.
Well, for sure, I mean, I can't speak for Richard. It's been so many years, but for sure, he was caught in a moment where he was empowered to do that work. And the studio was empowered to do that work. And it was an extraordinary moment, one that these things don't come again. So do I love it? Not entirely, but do I respect it? Absolutely, I respect many, many things though, and I absolutely respect it, and I think it's an amazing accomplishment. And I'm sorry his name is no longer associated with it, as you may know. I don't want to go there. Well, because of his, quote, behavior.
Oh,
Yeah, pathetic. But I mean, both sides. I mean, all of this is a small tragedy. But yeah, no, I think it was wonderful working for him. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I think there was some amazing work we all did together. I wasn't there when that was done, though. It was afterwards. Other question? Or?
Can you talk a little bit about the Barnes Foundation and how
Yeah.
you approach a collection that's existing? And
Yeah, interestingly, the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia, though I'd gone to Princeton and for sure taken art history classes, I had never visited. So when we were asked to compete on that, it was like, better go check it out. And indeed, a bunch of architects were there examining the thing as we did. It was an incredible journey. And that once again, I think that's a perfect example of where the right forces come together to create a satisfying and powerful and I think positive answer. And I think it was relatively few people, but every one of them counted in that. And for us, we accepted the assignment as it was given. A lot of people said this is an evil thing to do, to move the barns. And for sure, we had to keep our mouths shut, and I needed to read essays that let me believe that this had two different points of view, and I accepted that actually it was valuable to move it to its new site. But the buildings were really a product of having only about 5 people be on the same page. Boom. That's an amazing gift. And I just happened to be in the right place, just like Richard, the right place at the right time.
I have this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk aloud.
Yeah, okay, so going into a little bit more depth about what you were talking about before, with the parking lot and so on, just like stuff like that, how do you, as an artist and creator of what you design, how do you deal with that kind of, with like a disagreement off of like what you visualize versus what is, requested specifically, and if you like, speak to people?
So it's right. You have to first, that was one of these things where I had to be humble enough to sort of accept that the foundation was speaking for him was more important than even he was or I was. We did give him many alternatives, all of which were better. But however, in the end, we put it beneath the park, and I will say it's quite a good parking lot. At least there are no cars there on the site, and we got rid of a 6-lane highway. So we learned that we got a lot, but it still kind of pisses me off.
I mean, you were instructed to put out escalators in the Obama library.
Yeah. No, he's okay. I have to. Yeah, my grandson is telling me I gave up on another area too. I hate escalators, and I said I no fucking escalator in the building. I said it in front of the president, and we have 4 escalators. So yeah, I'm do the best we can. You have to, tough noogies, pal. This is life.
But that's where we're talking about.
Yeah, that's
here.
I have to make, at least they're beautiful. I think they're going to be very beautiful. There's an 85-foot tall art piece that sits in front of them. So I hope it'll be interesting, and it's hard to walk up that building. Yes, any other questions? Not my grandson, please.
I so loved your Venice Biennale presentation years ago, and I thought it was such a different approach, bringing together so many people, designers, artists who inspired you. And I'm just curious what projects and other designers are inspiring you today.
Oh, well, that was really a wonderful.
It was, and maybe talk a little.
Well, talk about it. We were invited. I was invited. Billy and I were invited to the Venice Biennale, and we said we wanted the most humble place in the Biennale, and we were given a seed shed about the size of this red barn, and it had been used for seeds for the gardens, and so there were shelves of where the seeds had all gone, and we then had 35 boxes made, wooden boxes, and sent to friends and said, put anything in this box you like, fill it up. All you have to do is fill it up, send it to Venice, we will present it, and we'll send it back to you. And it was a great experience because we got people all around the world from Africa to Japan, and they all were friends, and whatever they put in was amazing. So it was a kind of just inviting us to participate in a larger world. To me, that's the kind of art I'd like to do. Again, I think it's more akin to architecture, realizing it's a collective. Anybody else?
Todd, you talk about the job is really a service job,
Yes.
right? And so it's probably a constant fight between ego and service, right?
Yeah.
And if you're to get it wrong, if you look at other people's work,
Uh-huh.
which is worse? Kind of the boring service that worked for the client
Uh-huh.
and the purpose. Do you see that and you're more insulted by that, or do you see an ego play and a vanity play that didn't really work in for the purpose?
Well, if you're talking about my work, I have to live with my work on that. I don't judge other people. I don't judge other people. I admire a cabinet maker who I particularly love, who's completely, seems his ego is not there at all, and yet it is. I know somewhere it's hidden there. And I know other people who seem to have really inflated egos, and that might also be a flare that inside they're, in fact, incredibly insecure. So I don't really judge that. I just have to deal with my own problems and realize I want to work for people I respect. I want to do jobs where I can respect the results, and I like the results to be unknown. I mean, then I've grown. Then I'm lucky.
You mentioned Rome
Mm-hmm.
as an inflection point
Yes.
in your life. It's been an inflection point for artists for centuries.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that with more details?
Well,
what was it about Rome for you?
You know, I hadn't really traveled to Europe. I'd been there once with my parents when I was quite young. And I'd worked really hard. I started, as I say, 16, just loved work and loved doing anything. So I had 2 kids and applied for this thing because someone told me I should be good for me. And then it was a 6-month fellowship. I only spent 3.5 months there. I'd created a proposal, and I realized when I got there, I had nothing to say in my proposal, that Rome was speaking to me in a different way. And to me, it was just time. It was a frame of time where I could just simply say, look, and walk with people who are art historians and could see one kind of thing in the painting, and they couldn't see another. I realized I could see stuff that other people couldn't see, but it was my stuff. And so it was, and I could see walls, and I could see the landscape, and and I didn't know I was changed. I came back, get back to work, and I just realized in waves it's come over me. I mean, the arc of time, I think, being part of a larger arc of time, and realize how civilizations are constantly changing. This island will disappear. But I think a lot about the warehouse over there, right? Sea level rising and all that stuff. It will go. We will go. Or maybe we can lift it up, or maybe there's something we can do. But I think we're lucky to be in this particular moment, in this arc of time. That's life. And so that's what I learned from Rome.
Got a question over here?
I was just harking back to what you were talking about before, really frustrating about the cars and the parking lot. Wondering about any experience you might have had where you were successful in being able to give a perspective back to a client and say, maybe we have to think outside of just this project. Like that.
Well, no, I do think that I think by raising 2 subjects, one is that we needed to erase the 6-lane highway. That was a good one. And took a lot of work, and also suggesting that the library should be a real library, not a quote presidential library. Those, and it could be the president's idea, but I would say we had a lot to do in suggesting this thing, that it was both about, and we came to it with the idea of enabling. We in our presentation we said enabling and ennobling, and we said that the president, by being the first black president, ennobled the office, but he also was an enabler, a person who worked in the communities. So we wanted the whole project to be about these things, and instead of being an object, and unfortunately, and we do have an object there, it was about a place. So these ideas are embedded, and they're bigger ideas than a goddamn car. There or not. I mean, more importantly is that people love the park. It's like, perfect example, wow, is Central Park. I mean, Olmsted advice. So there's a really good example. To me, they made this park, which was a commercial venture in the center of New York, but they also, and they put all sorts of buildings and so on in it, and they made all these activities. And instead of making a pristine landscape, in fact, it's an active landscape, and it's a democratic landscape because everyone gets to do whatever they need to do in the landscape. So I think that these are big ideas that somehow were present. I don't know that Olmsted knew them before he knew them. Like we didn't know these answers before we knew them or realized them. So they're embedded in the project. They're embedded in the problem, solving the problem.
And do you think sharing those ideas helps empower the other decision makers to go out and lobby for those things?
Well, I think it does, but I don't want to pretend that my work is anything more than the work. So it would be nice, but they could make good decisions or bad decisions. I mean, I hope. I mean, it bothers me a lot when work is torn down. So that's why we don't do commercial work. I don't want money to be the driver. I'm not interested in making money. For that, I want to have a relationship. And the relationship is the thing that changes everything.
Yeah.
That's it. So,
Right here.
yeah.
I'm thinking about, as you're talking about this idea of words and ideas and concepts, when you talk about what is beautiful to you, or what is functional, or what is enabling a certain idea, and I'm curious about how this synergizes with your client's idea of those same concepts. In other words, has there been a time when you have realized that when you're with a client and you actually don't have the same idea about, you said the same words,
Yeah.
but you brought a whole other bunch of information into that idea that is not at all aligned?
Well, that's right. That's right. I think, when you're starting out young, you're looking for any job you can get. I'm happy to do anything, just pay me. And, and then I began to realize, oh my God, just doing somebody's work is not enough. You need to actually do something for yourself. But I don't know what it is I'm doing for myself. I'm just trying to realize you got to do something for yourself. So I would say that I'll do everything you want, but I just want to make sure there's some moment of magic for myself. You won't know about it, but it'll be there for me. And that's all I care about. Within this work, has to be something that actually lifts your spirit, lifts my spirit, makes me feel good. And I don't know that it has to be a thing. It actually can be, often for me, it's in the ceiling and the sky plane, because all of the practical stuff we've got are beneath our feet. Look at the paint on the floor through here. But in a way, I think that the spirit, and I do sort of believe this, that the spiritual is the change of day, the change of light, the opportunity for us to go beyond the pedestrian to the simple problem solving to something else. Sorry about that. Yeah.
On a similar point, actually, about light, I'm a student at Bennington College,
Mhm.
where I use design designed the
Oh,
lens.
Kappa,
which-
yeah.
Yeah, Kappa, and I'm not, yes, Kappa, but specifically my question was about the lens because you are dealing with
That's ex-
the light as
Yeah,
spiritual
okay.
in that case.
No, yeah.
And I guess I wanted to ask both about how filling that vessel with light and how that acts as sort of, how that interfaces with it being a spiritual space. And also, I'm not sure how much this was intended, but I've sang in that space. And the way that sound fills that space feels
Yeah,
like
well,
it's
that,
an act of spiritual activation.
well, that was a wonderful, I mean, first, thank you. That was an incredible experience. I just got a nice note from people there. This is a project we did in Bennington, which was the Center for Public Action. And basically people going to school and learning that school needs to be about actually acting in the world. And it was a very weird assignment. And we proposed a space that was really off the grid. It's not entirely off the grid, but which was like the Pantheon, which is what only affected by light and the change of day. It was a place to be and where mystery could envelop you. So they actually built this little thing, which is smaller than half this room. But we also built another space right in the center, the courtyard, which I felt was also part of that, where the small fountain is, where in fact, these are spaces where nothing happens. And I do believe that it's critical for us to think of where nothing happens, where you have not done it because it's needed, but exactly because something else is needed and you don't know what it is. And it's maybe a place to drop your shoulders. It's just a place to allow light to come in or sound to be more powerful. These are the treasure, the real gifts, if I'm lucky, but they're the gift that the client gives me. I mean, they're there and they exist in history, but you find a way to.
It's like those spaces between the galleries and
Precise.
the barns.
Exactly. They're the non-programmed spaces.
You had to replicate those galleries.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a whole lot of fun in that.
No.
But then we talked about it was the spaces between.
Yeah.
When I went,
Yeah.
I was going from one gallery to the next, and I found myself in these spaces
Yeah.
between. And I was like, it was like a place to sort of collect yourself and kind of meditate a little bit. It doesn't last long.
Yeah.
But it's really important.
Yeah, you know, it is. Thank you. It does work. So again, we have to accept all the quotidian that is out there.
Right.
And then we actually need to be able to say, what is the other that we might be able to add to life? And it doesn't have to be big. Again, it can be quite small. It can be, maybe it's the sound of water at a certain moment in a place. You know, you've heard that, a dripping water, and it's like, oh my God, it's just dropped everything. So yeah. Architecture deserves to deliver those things along with its assignment.
You find cutting away must often be more rewarding than bringing to.
Yep. Except if somebody wants something, you got to bring it to them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like the goddamn cars. It still gets me mad. But in doing that, I found something else.
Right.
You know.
Right. How about outside here? Anybody have any questions out here? We've got them. All right. Well, listen.
Hey.
Thank you, Tod, so much for this. Our community is so lucky to have you here and your family here.
I'm so lucky we're here. Thanks.
So thank you, everybody.
Yeah.